Aotearoa, welcome whānau to the War on News, your weekly sacred council on assault on current affairs, beamed live from the Palatial Australia's news bunker, buried deep beneath the heart of the Grey Republic. If this show is hosted by Michael Laws after his terrible bashing last week, it would be called Dancing with the Scars. And tonight's political media crimes against reason kill zone, recreational rioting in London. When will NATO declare airstrikes to restore order the way they did in Libya? Capitalism declares 'tis but a flesh wound. Phil Goff denies ever being told Warren Tucker was his father, plus this week's Sex in the Super City and the Wanko the Week Award. Leading the War on News this week, brothers and sisters, while capitalism went into meltdown as the death of a father of four by the British police sparked night after night of rioting in England, one issue dominated the local media: the price of milk. Brothers and sisters, I am not interested in the lame justification by the greedy farmers about why trying to determine the price of milk is a pointless exercise. I'm not interested in the opinion of a monopoly benefiting from its monopoly. What's that you say, Fonterra? No reason to look at how your position of dominance impacts on the consumers who live in the country where the product is made? Well, thanks for that, but let's have a wee gander at the counter argument, which is you should pay out of your massive profits a dividend which subsidises your products for domestic consumption. Why, you thunder? Should farmers get a lesser price domestically than they can on the open international market, feeding the newly middle classes in developing countries into dairy-fueled heart attacks? The farmers should sell their milk cheaper to New Zealanders because we already pay a cost in the production of this milk. The water rights seized from communities alongside the pollution this industry causes our rivers and lakes are costs New Zealanders already bear, and the lowered price of milk should reflect that cost. No need for an inquiry. Now pass the popcorn and let's watch frightened rich people on CNBC trying to convince Americans that it's never been a better time to buy stocks. Brothers and sisters, after the latest moral panic knee-jerk of banning synthetic cannabis, Peter Dunne's toupee admitted in live chat to passing the duchy to the centre right-hand side. This latest attempt at relevancy by admitting to sparking up the cherry follows his live TV planking and will most likely end in Peter Dunne's toupee pulling boy racer donuts on Parliament's front lawn. Sadly, Peter Dunne's toupee could hold a rest home hostage with explosives and still no one from the press gallery would turn up. Brothers and sisters, Adidas seem to have managed to exhibit all the business ethics of a Mexican drug cartel by justifying all black jersey prices $100 more expensive here in New Zealand because we're rugby addicts. By exhibiting the kind of self-interest that would embarrass ratings agencies, Adidas are winning hearts and minds in New Zealand the way America is in Afghanistan every time they accidentally bomb school children. With 230,000 Rugby World Cup tickets still to sell and the cost of $39 million to the taxpayer likely to blow out, this Adidas jersey debacle has left a bad taste in the mouth the way chlamydia does. Seeing as Adidas seem to be the choice of sportswear for most British rioters, do we really want them associating with the All Blacks? To the headlines, whānau, recreational rioting has erupted all over Britain, ironically using the same social networking methods that made the Arab Spring so much fun. The role of the British police in shooting Mark Duggan, a father of four, has of course been utterly ignored. The police tried to cover up his death by insinuating that Mark Duggan had fired shots at the police, when it turned out that was false, and the manner in which the British police then disrespected the family by not even bothering to show up to answer questions about Duggan's death was all that was needed to spark this violence off. I wonder if the UK cops enjoying reaping what they sowed on this one. Let's be clear, no one wants to see violence and destruction like this, and no one can defend these little hoodlums, but sweet Jesus, whānau, they're facing 20% youth unemployment. The promise of democracy is that you can look into the face of your child and know they are going to get a better deal than you did. When democracy can't promise that due to venal corporate greed that has crashed the global economy, then disenfranchised people with no hope riot. This is exactly what happened throughout the 30s after the 1929 stock market collapse, when fascism and communism competed with democracy for all-out hegemonic power. Do I think those influences are in the frontal lobes of most of the chaffs stealing plasma TVs? Of course not. The zombies are rioting, not activating political mechanisms of class-based dissidence, but it's the environment austerity measures create that breeds riots. New Zealand's youth unemployment rate is 19.4%. Luckily, New Zealand youth are far too apathetic to ever organise in any way, shape or form to riot like this. The only thing that could motivate youth in New Zealand to riot is if John Key banned the current season of Glee. New Zealand, we don't give much of a shit about anything that isn't connected to the price of milk or All Black jerseys. Moving on with the headlines, whānau. Capitalism declares Tisbit a flesh wound. After losing their precious AAA rated credit, the US market fell over again, made a brief rally, and then fell over again. Apparently, corporate greed and hyper-consumerism isn't actually economically sustainable. Who would have thunk it? Whānau, I pointed out since the collapse of 2008 that we're heading towards a double-dip recession and that this was a crisis of capitalism, in the same way that the 1929 stock market collapse was a crisis of capitalism, and that all this talk that we were through the worst of the recession was as vacant as John Key's optimism. Just this week, the oracles of the rich were declaring that next year New Zealand would only have 5% unemployment. Really? These oracles of the rich promising us butterflies and rainbows are like a dealer trying to sell you your next hit of consumer confidence so you won't feel as poor as you actually are. Seeing as Paula Bennett is simply throwing people off welfare because the new guidelines National are using make getting a benefit more and more difficult, I wouldn't be surprised if unemployment drops to 1% by next year. Note, the majority of these beneficiaries don't actually have jobs, they're just being culled regardless. We are camouflaging our poor by making them invisible to official stats by ruling out their eligibility. That doesn't mean New Zealanders are doing well. That just means National are becoming better at hiding our social inequality. Sadly, the mainstream media are never allowed to mention the word capitalism, as news producers believe the mere mention is too intellectually challenging to their audience and will have them all immediately flicking over to the E channel. So there can't be any discussion about the impending collapse of the system they have such a vested interest in, meaning any suggestion that the growth uber alles mentality of consumer capitalism is simply not sustainable and that we need to tax rich people more is met with the sort of response that admitting you enjoy sex with animals does at Ponsonby dinner parties. Moving on with the headlines, whānau. Phil Goff denies ever being told Warren Tucker was his father. The bizarro world of spy versus spy in the wake of the Israeli spy nest in Christchurch reached a whole new level of what the hell last week when the spy master of New Zealand, Warren Tucker, released to far-right storm blogger Cameron Slater minutes of an SIS meeting showing Phil Goff had been flicked a note regarding the Israelis. Why the spy master of New Zealand is attacking the leader of the opposition by sending leaks to a far-right blogger before any other media outlet is a far larger question than Phil Goff's recall. Goff still claims that none of the issues raised by the Southland Times were ever briefed to him, calls into question whether or not the SIS gave John Key a different briefing to the one they gave Phil. Regardless, the spy master cannot get involved in attacks on the leader of the opposition by handing out secret briefings to far-right bloggers. Some in the media were tipped off that if they sent in an OIA request that it would be answered quickly. So the question remains, who tipped off the media and who decided to give it to Slater first? The spy master of New Zealand should never be involved in attacks like this against the opposition, regardless of who the opposition is. Whānau, are you feeling sexy? It's Sex in the Super City time. You know things can't be good for National when even the New Zealand Herald editorial is criticising Stephen Joyce over his latest attempt to destroy the rail loop by ruling out tolls to pay for it. What the National Party don't seem to understand is that Auckland has one voice now, and that voice represents the largest city in this country, and that voice demands public transport. Isn't it funny how National ran through the super city and supported it when they thought John Banks was going to win? Now Len Brown is in with a public transport mandate. How quick the Nats don't want to listen. When you compare the billions National are wasting on building more motorways, why can't a fraction of that cost be spent on public transport instead? Auckland is getting screwed by Wellington once again, even though Auckland now has the political muscle. Len Brown should start sticking it to Joyce a lot harder. The first time Joyce ever caught a bus was a couple of days after he was appointed the Transport Minister. He's there to suck up to the road building industry. He is not there to help Aucklanders battle their traffic nightmare. All of that said, it is nothing compared to what the poor people of Christchurch are going through right now. Whānau, let's hand out this week's Wanko of the Week award. This week's Wank of the Week, brothers and sisters, has to go to the US credit downgrade. Watching communist China lecture free market America for the Milton Friedman dogma that passes economic policy in the US must surely be one of the most entertaining ironies of all time. Tea Party activists who put the mental back into fundamental held the planet to ransom just so that the wealthiest 1% didn't have to pay a single extra cent in tax. And we can see the exact same blinded ideological policy with John Key. Just like the Tea Party crazies, Key and the National Party refuse to put the tax burden on those who can most afford it and rely on trickle-down hogwash to bypass any critical analysis of their greed masquerading as the spirit of enterprise. The venal corporate greed that created the 2008 crash was an injury. Demanding the wealthy maintain their power while asking the rest to make sacrifice is the insult. That's it for tonight, folks. Don't forget Citizen A plays Friday, 8 p.m. Freeview 21 and Sky 89. Follow me on my Citizen Bomber Twitter and Facebook site. It has all the shows posted up online and allows you to befriend other like-minded citizens for romantic news moments. Good night, New Zealand. You stay classy, Aotearoa. Righto.